The easiest way to keep a person from becoming wealthy is not to make him lazy. It is to make him respectable. That is the trick almost nobody notices. If I wanted to sabotage a life financially, I would not start with lottery tickets and casino floors. Too obvious, too dramatic. Most adults already know those are dangerous. I would do something much more effective. I would surround the person with expensive things that look mature, practical, optimized, grown up, and successful. I would teach him to buy the truck that feels useful, the house that proves adulthood, the renovation that is adding value, the premium card that signals arrival, the advisor who charges only 1%, the mattress that is somehow an investment, the online course that flatters ambition, the whole life policy that sounds sophisticated, the subscriptions that cost almost nothing each month, and the rewards points that make overspending feel intelligent. I would not need him to be reckless. I would only need him to confuse appearance with economics. That is how an enormous amount of wealth gets destroyed in ordinary life. Not with drama, with respectable waste. I have spent much of my life watching people talk about money, spend money, avoid money, worship money, and misunderstand money. And one thing has become increasingly clear to me. The largest leaks are often not hidden at all. They are simply socially blessed. If enough people call something normal, the brain stops testing it. The person assumes that because the purchase is common, it must be sensible. If many people in his income bracket do it, surely it cannot be that destructive. This is how whole categories of spending become invisible, while still draining decades of future freedom. That is why I trust numbers more than vibes. Vibes are how people buy houses they cannot really carry, cars they do not truly need, subscriptions they forgot, and financial products they barely understand. Let us begin with one sentence that should be burned into the wall of every household in America. Not everything that improves your life is an investment. I wish more people could say that out loud without feeling as if they had confessed to weakness. A thing can be wonderful and still not be an investment. A beautiful couch may improve your evenings. A renovation may make your home more enjoyable. A better mattress may improve your sleep. A premium skin care routine may make you feel polished and cared for. A luxury watch may delight you. Fine. Good. Human life is allowed to contain pleasure and beauty. But the minute you start calling every pleasure an investment, you corrupt your own judgment. You make it harder to know when you are spending on joy and when you are actually buying an asset. This matters because language shapes behavior. If you tell yourself the truck is practical, the house is an investment, the renovation adds value, the card earns rewards, the fee is tiny, and the course is personal growth, then you can spend extraordinary amounts while still feeling prudent. You are no longer simply choosing a luxury, you are performing wisdom. That performance is expensive. I would rather tell the truth. If you want the premium faucet, buy the premium faucet because you like it. If you want the big deck, save for the deck because the deck would make your mornings better. If you want the expensive camera because you genuinely love photography and use it constantly, wonderful. The issue is not enjoyment. The issue is self-deception. Once you start pretending luxuries are investments, you begin financing them differently, defending them differently, and multiplying them far beyond what your finances can support. That is the road to a very polished form of poverty. And it often starts with the car. I have watched more financial damage hide inside car purchases than almost anywhere else. Cars are especially dangerous because they sit at the intersection of identity, convenience, masculinity, status, necessity, and habit. A person walks into a dealership thinking he is making a transportation decision. In reality, he is often making a story decision. He is choosing a version of himself. Capable, rugged, successful, adult, rewarded, deserving. The dealership knows this. The salesman does not need to say it out loud. He only needs to slide the conversation away from total cost and toward monthly payment. Monthly payment is one of the cleverest narcotics in consumer finance. It turns a giant decision into a manageable little sensation. It says, do not think about the total. Think about whether you can tolerate this every month. That is exactly how people end up in absurd vehicles, with absurd loan terms and perfectly calm expressions. They say things like, "I can afford it." What they mean is, "I can survive the payment for now." Those are not the same sentence. The adult question is not whether the monthly number fits. The adult question is what the entire machine costs: purchase price, interest, insurance, fuel, maintenance, registration, tires, parking, opportunity cost, how much future investing died. So this vehicle could exist. Once you ask those questions, a lot of reasonable car purchases begin to look like what they really are: status consumption with a practical excuse taped to the front. The truck is one of my favorite examples because it reveals how good people are at lying to themselves respectfully. Many buyers do not need the truck. They need the feeling of the truck. They need the image of capability, the fantasy of utility, the identity of being the sort of person who could tow, haul, build, and move. Fine. But say that, do not tell me a truck that devours income, fuel, and insurance is the only sensible decision. Because once a year you might help a friend move a couch. That is theater. And theater financed at 7% over 7 years is not practicality. It is performance debt. Now let us move to the house, where the mythology becomes even more aggressive. People in America are taught from such a young age that buying a house is adulthood that many never think to test the claim. Own the home, build equity, stop throwing money away on rent. Become serious, become stable, become real. The slogans come so early and so often that questioning them feels almost immoral. I do not care about moral theater around housing. I care about arithmetic. A primary residence can be a wonderful life choice. It can provide roots, stability, privacy, and emotional grounding. But it is not automatically a brilliant financial investment, just because previous generations repeated that line like scripture. Depending on where you live, what you pay, what the rates are, how long you will stay, and what the carrying costs look like, a house can be an excellent decision, a mediocre one, or a deeply expensive trap. This is especially true. Stretching for a house has become one of the most socially approved ways to set your future on fire. A bigger mortgage, bigger taxes, bigger maintenance, bigger furnishing costs, bigger pressure to finish rooms, remodel the kitchen, upgrade the patio, fence the yard, replace the roof, paint the exterior, and buy all the lifestyle accessories that homes quietly demand. People look only at the down payment and mortgage. The house laughs and sends 10 more bills. I have rented in markets where renting was obviously the stronger financial move. Not emotionally stronger, perhaps, because culture will still try to make you feel like a child, but mathematically stronger, more liquidity, more optionality, lower carrying cost, fewer surprise repairs, more capital left for actual investments. The house myth survives because most people would rather obey a familiar script than run the numbers honestly. And then there is renovation, which might be the funniest lie in modern personal finance. Americans adore the phrase, adding value. It has become a magic trick. Say adding value, and somehow a $75,000 basement no longer feels like consumption. It feels like mastery. Say adding value, and the premium bathroom, outdoor kitchen, custom built, and marble surfaces float into a special moral category where they no longer count as luxuries. It is a wonderful story. If you enjoy stories, I prefer reality. Most renovations are luxuries. That does not mean they are foolish. It means they are luxuries. That distinction saves people from making terrible financing choices. If you admit a renovation is mostly for joy rather than return, then you are much less likely to borrow against your future for it. You are more likely to save first, more likely to scale it appropriately, more likely to ask whether the pleasure truly matches the cost, more likely to choose timing intelligently. But if you call the renovation an investment, then suddenly taking on debt for it feels prudent. You are not borrowing for pleasure. You tell yourself you are creating value. That is how beautiful wants become ugly liabilities. The same performance happens in smaller categories, too. Fitness gadgets, kitchen gadgets, skin, care systems, biohacking devices, fancy journals, supplements, better productivity tools. People buy these things not only because they want the object, but because they want the identity attached to it. They want to be the person who meal preps, stretches, journals, lifts, hydrates, tracks sleep, and wakes up transformed. A gadget becomes the token of a future self. That is why so many of these purchases feel amazing at checkout and then disappear into drawers, garages, and digital graveyards. Buying aspiration is not the same as doing the work. This is one of the most expensive confusions in consumer life. A person buys the course and feels productive. He buys the planner and feels organized. He buys the meal system and feels healthy. He buys the gym accessory and feels disciplined. Meanwhile, the actual habits remain thin. The spending produced a mood, not a result. I do not say this as a scold. I say it as someone who understands the seduction. It feels wonderful to purchase a better version of yourself. It feels less wonderful to become one slowly and without shopping. Yet the second path is where wealth survives. The first path often produces closets full of intention and accounts empty of progress. This is where I think waiting becomes one of the most powerful wealth tools in the world. Not because waiting is noble in itself, but because craving is often temporary. If an expensive item still feels necessary after 30 honest days, and if it fits inside a plan, and if paying cash does not distort more important goals, then fine, bring it in. But most people are not waiting 30 days. They are buying inside the first 30 minutes of emotion. Emotion is where retailers make their money. Discipline is where households keep it. The same principle applies to subscriptions, which are the modern person's favorite way to leak money without emotional pain. A subscription feels harmless because it is small and because it is automated. That combination makes it lethal in aggregate. Nobody feels the loss sharply enough to care. Nobody wakes up thinking, my future was destroyed by $12, but 12 here, 20 there. Another 18 for convenience, another monthly software fee, another streaming platform, another digital product you forgot to use, and suddenly you are financing a graveyard of previous selves. That is what subscriptions really are. Money paid to old decisions you no longer remember making. The solution is not to become monastic. The solution is to audit. A subscription should either earn its place or die. Does it save time? Does it improve health? Does it provide real enjoyment? Does it help generate income? Wonderful, keep it. But if it exists only because it was easy to start and slightly annoying to cancel, then you are paying tuition to inertia. I have no respect for inertia. Extended warranties operate on the same emotional logic. They do not sell protection. They sell the relief of avoiding imagined regret. And most of the time, they do it at a ridiculous margin. If the manufacturer already covers the product, if your credit card already adds another layer of protection, if the probability of needing the extended warranty is modest, and if the claim experience is full of friction anyway, then what exactly did you buy? Usually you bought fear packaged as responsibility. That is one reason I tell people to stop over-insuring trivial things. Save the serious insurance for serious risks. Term life, if people depend on you, health insurance. Liability coverage, property protection where appropriate. But not every toaster, tablet, and appliance deserves its own little fear tax. Then there is the great circus of rewards cards and prestige cards. I have almost no problem with rewards in disciplined hands. If you pay in full every month and the card truly adds value, terrific. Extract every point the bank is willing to give you. But a person carrying credit card debt while talking proudly about points is a tragicomic figure. He is paying 27% interest for the pleasure of receiving a penny here and there in rewards. That is not optimization. That is a glitter addiction. The same goes for prestige cards with annual fees high enough to feed a Roth IRA contribution. Lounge access twice a year does not change your life. Priority boarding does not make you rich. A metal card does not alter your net worth. If the travel credits and benefits genuinely exceed the cost, fine, but if you are paying hundreds of dollars annually just to feel like a certain kind of person while the benefits go unused, then you are renting status. Status rental is one of the worst deals in modern finance, and yet people love it because it flatters them. That is the secret behind most waste. It flatters before it empties. The smartest looking traps are even subtler. Overcomplicated financial products, whole life sold as investing, infinite banking fantasies, structured notes, exotic tax strategies for people whose finances are nowhere near complex enough to justify them. Investors like to feel sophisticated. Salespeople know this. Complexity becomes costume jewelry for the insecure. The fees are huge, the explanations are dense, and the buyer walks away feeling as though he has entered an elite circle. In reality, he may have bought little more than high commissions and underwhelming returns wrapped in elegant words. I distrust complexity that arrives before simplicity has been mastered. Most people do not need a financial labyrinth. They need the basics done exceptionally well. Capture the employer match. Use a Roth IRA when appropriate. Buy low-cost index funds. Automate contributions. Keep fixed costs sane. Maintain a buffer. Live your rich life intentionally instead of accidentally. That is not glamorous. It is also how a huge amount of wealth is quietly built. Compare that with another favorite leak, the endless purchase of courses, programs, conferences, and masterminds that never get implemented. Buying education feels like action. Often it is only mood. A course can be wonderful. A conference can open a life-changing door. But if you are carrying credit card debt and still buying more educational products you do not complete, then you are not investing in yourself. You are spending on identity. The disciplined move is often to finish what you already bought. Use the free resources that already exist. Prove you can execute, and then buy premium guidance once action has created a real bottleneck. Action first, purchasing later. That order saves a lot of people from paying for fantasies they never operationalize. This is why I keep coming back to a distinction that has served me. Wealth is not built by cutting joy, it is built by cutting waste. Those are not the same project. A joy-filled life may include great meals, beautiful travel, a mattress you love, a home you actually want, and even a few irrational pleasures that simply make your days better. Wonderful. But wealth demands that the rest of life be handled with honesty. You cannot spend like every comfort is an investment. Every aspiration requires a purchase. Every practical seeming object must be financed. Every subscription is harmless, every fee is small, and every status symbol is earned. Then expect your future to remain intact. The future keeps score whether your language is honest or not. That is why intentional people often look odd from the outside. They do not spend less in every category. They spend less in the categories that do not matter. They look almost lavish in a few places and almost ruthless everywhere else. That is exactly the point. A rich life is not a life with no spending. It is a life where spending follows values instead of scripts. If you want one simple filter, here is mine. Before a large discretionary purchase, ask 3 questions. Does this genuinely improve the life I want? If I could not finance it, would I still want it enough to save for it? And if it reappeared in 30 days, would I still feel the same urgency? Those questions destroy an astonishing amount of expensive nonsense. Not all of it, of course. Human beings are wonderfully irrational. But enough of it to matter, and once enough of it dies, something beautiful begins to happen. The leaks slow, the emergency fund grows, the investments get fed, the guilt drops because the spending that remains was chosen. The person starts feeling rich in the only way that really counts, not because every purchase looks expensive, but because the money is finally doing what he told it to do. That is the whole game. Not deprivation, discernment. Not austerity, accuracy. Not saying no to everything. Learning what deserves a yes. Most people are not being impoverished by one giant mistake. They are being impoverished by 100 little confusions. Clear those confusions, and wealth has room to arrive.